Welcome, everyone, to our Salon number 67, Responding to the Need for Solidarity, with Jennifer Long and Genevieve Vaughan. Kind of rhymes. Sorry, I just noticed that. In the Maternal Gift Economy Breaking Through series, hosted by the International Feminists for the Gift Economy. We are very glad you have joined us today. I am Letecia Layson, your moderator. I'm going to give some short introductions to Genevieve and Jennifer, and then the presentations will take place. After the presentations, we'll have time for some Q&A. I'm going to first introduce our speakers in this order. Genevieve Vaughan. She is an independent researcher, and of course, some of you know her as the mother of the maternal gift economy movement. She lives part-time in Italy and part-time in Texas. She created a multicultural, all-woman activist foundation for a compassionate society that had its life from 1987 through 2005. In 1992, she founded the Temple of Sekhmet in the Nevada desert that continues to today. She co-created this network, the International Feminists for a Gift Economy, in 2001. She's an author of many articles. She's presented in many countries, on many platforms. She's the author of several books. Her most recent book is The Gift in the Heart of Language. And, of course, the foundational book, Forgiving. Jennifer Long is the co-director of Casa de Marianela and program director of Casa de Marianela's adult shelter since 1991. She oversees all programs, administration, and development for the organization. She first got interested in working with immigrants and refugees while working with groups who opposed the U.S. military aid to Central America in the early 1980s. She was drawn to directly help the people impacted by U.S. policy and other forms of injustice. She enjoys the close personal connection that working at a shelter provides. She also enjoys working with the young people who commit to doing a year of service at Casa Marianela. We are very, very happy to have her with us today. So Genevieve, if you would just start us off. Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody, and so happy that that Jennifer and her friend could come. And I'm talking today about something I'm not an expert in, but that I'm very moved by, because there is a project in Italy that is a project of hospitality that works as a whole little town has welcomed immigrants in to be part of it. And this has started in about 1998, I think, when a group of Kurds landed on the beach near this little town, and the townspeople took them into the town, led by their mayor, who is a very visionary person, and they began to live there. And the reason there were empty houses there was that Italians that lived there had immigrated to the United States and to South America, Argentina, and so on. And they had left their houses empty years before. And so the mayor contacted these people and their descendants, and they agreed to let the immigrants come and live in their houses. And then they decided to create jobs for people by doing glass blowing and artisan work and all kinds of things. And this little town that had become quite almost a ghost town because so many people had left began to prosper and became a really ideal place for immigrants to come and live. And many did. And some of them left and went to other places, and then more came. And so it was a wonderful example, or is still a wonderful example of hospitality. And this mayor, who was elected several times, at a certain point was accused by the Italian government, or people in the government who were not pleased with this project, accused him of making money on it and doing things that he really shouldn't have done. And so he was under house arrest. He got convicted of this, and he was going to prison for 13 years. And now he's just been exonerated. He was in house arrest for 2 years, and now he's been exonerated. And he's also become mayor again, and
Wow.
just been elected as a member of the European Parliament. So it's wonderful that in the end, justice has been done, and the man and the town are getting the credit that they deserve, and the people that are living there are happily continuing to live and use the town for its good services. And so I want to show you some videos that I got from YouTube about it. And so I'd asked Diane to show the first.
Slowly moving forward with their new life. Daniel Yeboah is one of hundreds of migrants who have turned the town of Riace into an example of integration. He collects rubbish for a living using donkeys. To locals, it's an ancient tradition. To him, it's a fresh start.
I've been in different parts of the country, you know. It's different because the people here, they are very kind, you know. They used to play with everybody. They don't discriminate that you are from Africa, you are from Asia, you are from, you know. They used to play with everybody. They used to welcome everybody here.
Rising unemployment forced young people to look for work elsewhere. With an aging population, this town seemed destined to disappear. Its mayor decided immigration was the answer. He started a scheme that allowed economic migrants to live, work, study, and open their own businesses.
Our parents used to tell us that even the last of lasts are worthwhile, so we gave them existing houses that were abandoned by immigrants, and they blended in with the local population.
The state gives Riace $40 a day for each person to pay for their basic needs. The mayor says payments often come late, so he printed out makeshift bills that work as credit for shopkeepers until the money arrives.
These migrants come from every corner of the Middle East and Africa. About 200 of them now live and work in Riace. Well, that's about 25% of the population.
These locals have seen the town slowly change from an insular society to a multicultural one.
The old residents all left looking for work. Thank God they came in to replace them.
Riace was built in the 16th century on top of a hill to fight off foreign invaders. Now it's outsiders like Daniel Yeboah helping it to survive. Claudio Lavanga, Al Jazeera, Riace.
Wow.
So let's see the next pictures, Diane. And this is just a group of still photographs that will give you a bit of what the environment is like there. So there you can see there's a picture of the village at night, and go ahead and change there you can see also at night. Go on. And here's some of the immigrants that are working, or maybe they're not actually working. Maybe these are actually buying some ice cream, it looks like. And here they're playing volleyball. Go ahead. Here's some more at a store. Here they're playing that game that they all play in Italy so much, that flipper, isn't it? Yeah. And it's the fact that the whole town has now become a town of immigrants and old people, basically, lots of old people that are living together in a good way.
Mm. Love it.
Yeah, isn't it great?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see the next one, Diane. This next one, it's long, and I'm not going to show you the whole thing. I'm just going to show you the last few minutes of it. And it's, you can see, and I'm also not a religious person, but this is or at least I'm in the goddess religion, not the main religions. And so you can see this integration of religions, where they have in this Catholic Church, there's the Muslims speaking in their own language and doing their own prayers. And the priest is inviting the different immigrants to speak and to participate in from their own religious points of view. And I think that is also really worthwhile seeing. And then after that, we'll see some boats arriving at the shore. But here you can see on the wall, there are clouds of the different countries that the people come from. They're just standing in front of that.
Very true.
Saluto il loro cuore con affetto della Somalia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Gambia, Eritrea, Etiopia, Nigeria, Tunisia, Marocco, Ghana, Egitto. Questi paesi che noi questa sera accogliamo insieme con loro vogliamo pregare per la pace. Questa famiglia arriva dal Gambia, è una famiglia musulmana, loro pregheranno lo stesso Dio nostro a loro nella loro lingua.
والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله خاتم النبيين وإمام المرسلين أما بعد أيها الإخوة لقد جاءكم رسول من أنفسكم وعزيز حكيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط المستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنزل آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حقا قولا على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان وهم مهون وجعلنا من بين يديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون والسلام عليكم أنذرتهم ولم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من يتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشر المغفرة العظيم الكريم.
Lei invece è dell'Afghanistan, pregherà nella sua lingua.
مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين.
Grazie. Bene, si sono elevate le nostre preghiere. Continuiamo a pregare per la pace ognuno nel proprio cuore, tornando a casa stasera.
So those are some people who were lucky and made it to the shore. As I said, there are a lot of people who don't. And there have been many shipwrecks at sea, and many people have been drowned. And a friend of mine, Luciana Negro, is a woman who has started a campaign all across Italy that anytime there is a boat in difficulty, the people come out in the piazzas and demonstrate so that everybody knows this is happening, and that they enforce the sort of, at least hopefully, get the authorities to send boats to help them. So that is another wonderful project that maybe one of these days we'll have somebody coming and talking about. Actually, last year, I think we did have a woman talk about that too. So Diane, if you put up the next.
Sai cos'è emergenza? Emergenza quando uno, non lo so, è accorto di umanità. L'emergenza ce l'ha nella sua coscienza. Allora, questo è il villaggio globale. Queste sono tutte case di emigranti.
Pour soutenir Mimo Lucano, l'ancien maire de Riace.
Was hier passiert, ist ein Skandal. Das ist eine Kriminalisierung von Migration insgesamt.
Per presentare uno studio che parla della criminalizzazione della solidarietà.
Per portare solidarietà, aiuto.
It is just rescue, save life at sea, and nothing more than that.
Beautiful.
So, and then there's one more.
Un'emozione indescrivibile. Per me la quarta volta.
Undescribable emotion.
Forse è la più bella, la più sofferta. Proviene da una storia di sofferenza, di resistenza.
Coming from a long time of suffering in house arrest.
Non posso essere ipocrita se vi dicessi che questa è la vittoria più importante, non quella di ieri sera.
This is the most important thing, being the mayor not winning the European Parliament like I did last night.
Un'emozione indescrivibile. È durata tutta una notte, anche con la sofferenza di questi ultimi attimi così incerti. È stato ancora più bello.
Ecco, una doppia vittoria in meno di 24 ore. Cosa ti senti di dire a Salvini che ti ha definito 1-0?
Salvini was the minister that said he was a 0. Now the guy said he got the highest grade.
Invitare per venire, visto che era arrivato quando 5 anni fa aveva con entusiasmo
like to invite him to
pensato
come.
che tutto sarebbe finito. Si è sbagliato. Il dato che 5 anni fa aveva attraversato l'Italia, i paesi dell'accoglienza, tutto un disastro che non si può immaginare. Questa è la risposta. Penso che abbiamo la possibilità di avere questa connessione con l'Europa e dove porteremo le nostre istanze, la nostra terra, la mia storia, la storia di una comunità che
we have this chance to connect with Europe where we'll take our story and our message of humanity to the world.
Ha trovato una via per resistere, per sopravvivere, per non morire.
Una destra che avanza in Europa, ma la sinistra resiste da Riace.
Sì, questo è il messaggio. Dalla periferia Italia, dalla periferia Europa,
while the local people are going to the left.
Per l'Europa, per il mondo.
Come ti dividerai tra Riace e
questo ancora non lo so. Questo ancora non lo so. Una cosa che sicuramente mi sarà facile è quella che per me non cambierà come il rapporto con la politica vissuta non con le distanze. Sono uno di tutti e credo di avere gli anticorpi giusti per non fare le distanze con i cittadini, con le persone. E uno strumento in più, mettiamolo così. Credo non solo per Riace, ma per il comprensorio, per Riace ha avuto una storia, un'esperienza fantastica. Ha accolto persone in fuga dalle guerre e dalla miseria. È un'opera che non si vede, ma forse è immateriale, ma forse per me questo è il nostro biglietto da visita.
Oggi è un giorno di festa, però tu hai sopportato un calvario negli ultimi 5 anni.
Antonio Gramsci diceva che bisogna avere sempre il coraggio di continuare, di ricominciare.
Now, like Gramsci said, you always have to have the courage to start again and to continue.
Amen.
Amen. So that's the end of the videos. And I'm glad, I think they gave a view of what this town is. From time to time, they've had from 400 to 200 to more, 450, 500 people, immigrants living in the town, with the rest of the people who are somewhere like 1,200 or 1,400. So it's a mixture of, and most of the people living in the town are old. So it's a mixture of young and old and of all different cultures. And it's a really fantastic example of what can be done, because really that town was a ghost town. And there's so many of those all over Italy, and little towns on top of hills. And all the young people have left, and the houses are empty, and there are no jobs. And so all of these people who are arriving from Africa and the Middle East can come and stay. You know, it's available. And most of these areas are poor, and so having so many new people creates new jobs, and it's a wonderful solution. I wish it could be everywhere. So I'm done, I think, for now.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jen. That was very inspiring. And I agree with Marta Benavides and others who've made a comment that you're just smiling during the whole all the videos. It just makes you so happy. It's so good to see you smiling like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Jennifer is
And,
smiling.
yes, Jennifer is smiling too.
It. Yeah.
So let us welcome Jennifer, and Jennifer is going to just introduce Helen to us just briefly so that we can hear what they have to say about what is all going on at Casa Marianela and all those good work. So welcome, Jennifer and Helen.
Thank you so much. This is Helen Tuelde Rison, and she is from Eritrea. And it's appropriate to be talking about Italy because Eritrea was an Italian colony. So Eritreans, their grandparents speak Italian. It's a comfortable place for them to go. Helen left Eritrea 10 years ago, and so she has been living the life of a refugee for 10 years and has extensive experience in what it feels like to leave your country, to not know where you're home again, to not be with your family, and to face a multitude of injustices on the journey to try to get to safety, including time in a U.S. detention center. So she'll be talking some about that, but let me just give a little overview of what's going on here in the United States and in Texas and in Austin. For any of you who watched the debate the other night, you know that our horrible former President Trump spent a lot of his time blaming immigrants for imaginary offenses that they have committed, when in reality, immigrants are actually making America great again, just like they are in that little town in Italy. I have read that the reason we didn't go into a recession after the pandemic is because of the influx of immigrants who come in, and with their tremendous energy and enthusiasm, they bring jobs. They bring jobs and they spend money and they build the economy. So here in Texas, we have an especially tricky situation because we have a governor who has put razor wire in the river and put barriers to try to get people to drown. So we are seeing the next phase of the right wing using anti-immigration as a way to get more power, which is a worldwide phenomenon, but we're seeing it very advanced here in Texas. And for Helen and all of the people that come to Casa Marianela, it is 100% legal to come to the US border and ask for asylum. It is not only 100% legal, it is required. There's not anywhere else to apply for asylum other than at the border. And one thing the Biden administration talked about doing for a while was opening up an asylum office in Colombia, which would make sense because many of the people who come to us, including the man who's with us right now from China and the man who's with us from Russia, they start out in Brazil and they travel all the way through Latin America because they are required to come to the US border to ask for asylum. So of course, too many people are coming to the US border because that's the way the program is set up. At any rate, people come to the border, they're given papers. Many of them are then put in prisons, as Helen was, and others are released with these papers, but with no services, unlike in Europe or Canada, where asylum seekers would be given housing and food, and in Italy, an allowance, nothing is given to asylum seekers in the United States. They are not given housing, they're not given food, they're not given legal services, they're not given a work permit for at least a year for the most part. And they're expected to navigate this tremendously complex legal system in order to prove that they are worthy of getting refugee status in the United States, something that is very difficult to do. So at Casa Marianela, we are serving about 220 people a night in 14 houses. Those people come from all over the world. In 2023, we housed 575 people from 48 countries, and the majority of those people are from Africa. The reason that the majority are from Africa is that people from Central America often know people in the United States and go to their family or go to their friends. We are serving the people who have nowhere else to go. And that also includes a lot of people from Venezuela right now. So a lot of Venezuelans are coming. A lot of people from Angola are coming. Those are a couple of our largest country groups. But people from all over the world are coming to our border because they believe in what America says about itself. They believe that we are welcoming. They believe that we're just. They are shocked when they arrive at the border and they're put in chains. It's not what anybody expects. So we'll go back and forth with Helen, but let's start, Helen, with, and Helen is a little insecure about her English, though her English is pretty good now. She's been at Casa for a year. Why do people, I will help fill in if she gets stuck with her English. But Helen, why are people leaving Eritrea?
Because my country is danger. No hope.
Can you speak a little louder?
Because my country is not good.
Yeah, you're good.
Because my country is danger, or Eritrea is military, like 17 years, then go to military. Because I have also, I go to military.
Okay, let me stop and make sure everybody understands this. In Eritrea, there is universal slavery. Everyone at 17 has to enter the military. And essentially they get paid very little. They're moved very far from their families. Helen is now 28, just turned 28 this week. 10 years ago, she was put in the military at 17. Okay, keep going, Helen.
After I have problem in my country, because in danger, I live in Sudan.
So, Helen, like many Eritreans, like those Eritreans that are in that beautiful little Italian town, they're not allowed to have the internet. They're not allowed to have passports. And yet young people are trying to escape from Eritrea every day. And if they're caught, they're killed. How long were you in the military, Helen, before you tried to escape?
1 year.
1 year in the military.
Yeah.
And can you say anything? What was that like? What were you doing in the military?
Because different military. See, I started school because my school don't have money because my father sick. I helped my father. No have school, no go to school, go to military. Go. He called my name. I got to 6 months for my family. And it's military, like course, 6 months.
A training. So you did 6 months of training. I think she's also saying she'd had to drop out of school anyway because her father was sick. So she was working when she was drafted and spent 6 months in training. Is that right, Helen?
Yeah.
Keep going.
After she called my name because no go to military is something jail. Okay, I'm got to 6 months. I got to for my family. Yeah.
That's good, Helen. So, I mean, basically your father was depending on you to support him. And so who was supporting him when you left in the military?
Nothing. Just my small sister.
Just your little sister. Okay.
Yeah. After 6 months, I come back. In the night, I go to website, like, I don't know English. My English is small. In the holiday, I help my father. In the night, I go to website, like, one military go to, I don't know, Wardia. In Tigrinya is Wardia. I don't know English. After 1 year, one guy is problem for myself.
Okay, so on holidays, you would go back and help your father. But while you were in the military, you had a problem with someone who was harassing you. Is that right? There was a man who was giving you problems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then you left.
Yeah, I left after.
Okay, and so Helen, like most people in the world, most people in the world are not coming to the United States. One of the myths that people have about immigration is that everyone's coming to the United States. Most people can't afford to come to the United States. That's a really expensive journey because every step along the way, you're having to pay someone to get you to the next place. So Helen, most people went to the closest place she could go to, which was Sudan. And so Helen spent how long in Sudan?
I lived in Sudan 3 years.
3 years. So, you know, this is the more common thing that people do when they have to leave their country. She spent 3 years in Sudan. However, she was not safe in Sudan. Of course, now Sudan is at war, so no one is particularly safe in Sudan. But at that time, she wasn't safe because there are headhunters who will search for Eritreans in Sudan and send them back to Eritrea. And so she had to be in hiding, right?
I don't have passport. I don't have passport. I don't have ID, nothing. Just, I live, no, illegal.
Illegal. So it was illegal.
Because I don't have nothing, people.
But you had an uncle there, right?
In Sudan, yeah. My uncle helped 3 years.
So 3 years she spent in Sudan, and then where did you go?
After because I don't have working. This problem is Sudan. No freedom of Sudan is like woman. I live in Ethiopia.
Okay, so you know, not a good situation for women either in Sudan, and she wasn't able to work. So she moved on to Ethiopia after 3 years.
Yeah, I live in Ethiopia 1.5. Because Ethiopia has problem. Like I live Ethiopia and the Tigray same fighting. I'm not working. I'm nothing. Just inside. After my uncle, also my friend, I don't have money. That's big problem. Just helping my uncle, also my friend. After I speak my uncle and then my friend, I live in America.
Okay, so she gets to Ethiopia, and Ethiopia has developed a conflict with Tigray, which is Eritrean. So the war between Ethiopia and Eritrea is starting again. And as a side note, the wars between Eritrea and Ethiopia were totally caused by Italian colonization, because Italy tried to invade Ethiopia. Ethiopia is the only country in Africa that was never colonized, but they managed to carve off a little corner of Ethiopia and they called it Eritrea. So in Eritrea, they have Italian architecture and they eat spaghetti. But at the end of World War II, when Italy lost the war, England took over. So now they speak English in school instead of Italian. And then England decided to give Eritrea back to Ethiopia, which started a war in which 2 million people died, including Helen's mother. So yeah, that was all caused by the history of colonization. At any rate, then Helen went off on this journey to get to the United States. And how did you, oh, so her uncle and her brother and her friend put together the money for this really expensive trip. So where did you go from Ethiopia?
Ethiopia to Brazil, Sao Paulo.
Okay, so Brazil, and then where?
Peru, Panama, all the America, Panama, Paraguay, Honduras, all this coming in Mexico, 2 months.
So you were traveling for 2 months and you were by yourself?
Yeah, nothing.
You're by yourself and you crossed the Darien Gap by yourself, the Darien Gap, which is pure mountains and rivers and soldiers and crocodiles and snakes, and you did that by yourself?
Yes, myself. Also, my uncle called my phone, helping. This morning, I live, example, after Brazil, send money, Peru, Panama, was send money, after Panama, all till Mexico. Yeah, after Mexico, I go again to join in Mexico.
Okay, so all along the way, her uncle, she's able to connect with her uncle. None of this would be possible without cell phones. So he's able to send her money all along the way, and she makes it all the way to the U.S. border. And where did you cross into the United States?
California, San Diego.
Okay, San Diego. And what did they do when you came in it?
First, the border, because I don't have nothing. Ask ID, the passport, I don't have. After one police take my this one, I'm shocking because I don't know why. I'm coming help. I don't see before.
Right. So she comes to the border. She doesn't have a passport because they don't give passports in Eritrea. Yeah, she's shocked. Like, this is not what she expects from the United States, but they chain you. And then what?
After border, two border, another border take police. 3 days and one border. He asked small interview and the address because I don't have address, I don't have family, I don't have friend in America. I tell him nothing family, nothing friend.
So that's an important point too, because weirdly, our asylum program depends on people having family and friends in the United States. So they're asking her, where can you go stay in the United States? And she doesn't know anyone in the United States. And meanwhile, she is shocked that if she's coming here asking for help, that someone is chaining her and putting her in prison. But she doesn't know. She doesn't know where to go. Okay, keep going.
After 3 days in California, in San Diego, Mesa, he talk again 4 months of Mesa.
Okay, so then they put her in an immigration detention center for 4 months. And meanwhile, she has had a credible fear interview. That's the first step. And you got a positive, right, on your credible fear interview.
First interview, after positive, he asked my ICE officer, he asked address. I say, I don't have address. You have family, nothing in America, just me alone. I tell you. After interview positive, just I wait from address. After one officer called my name, I put inside. Helen, do you have, because like 2 months, nothing. He asked why. He said here, I don't have address. I tell you. She told me, okay, one help go to library, Casa Marianela help you. Okay, I go to library. After library, one officer he gave me at the paper Casa Marianela. Me apply send the Casa Marianela. After Casa Marianela, after 2 weeks come back because I don't send my document. Again, I send my document. After 1 month, Jennifer take my I have sponsor. One after 3 months, I have a sponsor. Yes, my eyes sleep, nothing cold. I wait after 4 months. Final is outside. Or I don't have after now. Inside for something office carry answer. I tell you, I don't have money. I don't know where can help me. Yeah, she told me, you go outside, just call my name. She's give number. And after I leave outside, because I don't have phone, nothing, just one taxi help me carry all our plan coming.
So at the adult shelter at Casa Marianela, we have 60 people living, another 50 on overflow. So we have about 110. We really focus on the people in detention centers because there's something like 40,000 people being held in these detention centers around the country. They do not have a right to a lawyer. They do not have a right to a speedy trial. They don't have the rights of criminals. They don't have right to decent conditions either in the detention centers. And the majority of them then get ordered deported because they're going to court without a lawyer, without actually knowing how to defend themselves. And we consider them to be at the highest risk of all the people. And it's also just invisible to the people in the United States that all these people who are coming in, believing in the United States, believing that we're going to help them, get put in these prisons and go through these courts. Some of the judges in the detention centers deny 98, 99% of cases. And then they consider they've done due process and they, come in the middle of the night. Do they do that at your detention center, come in the night to take people away?
Yeah, 10 o'clock outside.
So people are sleeping already and
Yeah.
they come get them, when they're more passive. And then they force them onto airplanes and deport them. So people never know when they're getting deported. And it's just like a constant fear, right? When you're in the detention center that they could come get you in the night. Were you worried about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But fortunately, we weren't deporting people to Eritrea for the most part, although during the Trump administration, some people were deported to Eritrea, because if you get deported to Eritrea, you are in big trouble, right? I mean, what happens to people who get deported?
I don't know, because maybe die. I don't know, maybe in jail. Because it's danger now.
They have some really hideous
No
prisons
cases.
in Eritrea that are in storage containers and they torture people. It's pretty horrible situation in Eritrea. Fortunately, Helen managed to get a hold of our address, and she had a compassionate deportation officer. It sounds like your officer helped you.
Yeah.
And she got a hold of us and she was able to come to us. And now Helen, a year into her stay, has a work permit.
Yeah.
She has a full-time job and she's looking for a place to stay. So she is doing great and has her final hearing coming up on August 15th. So, our state legislature in Texas recently passed SB 4. It's still held up in the courts, but it would deputize officials of all sorts to just track people down and haul them in front of a magistrate and get people deported, even if they're in proceedings already. Because everyone at Casa Marianela is in proceedings. Like, they all have a legal right to be in the United States. But under SB 4, if someone determines that you crossed the river and entered illegally, they could order you deported in spite of that. So it's sort of like this state of Texas versus the federal government type of situation. Really scary. Of course, our attorney general in Texas has been trying very hard to shut down an immigrant shelter in El Paso, Annunciation House, which is the oldest immigrant shelter in Texas and the most established. And he failed in court immediately, but is still trying to do it, accusing them of trafficking, of all things, when they're actually working with Border Patrol to take care of the people that are crossing the border. So we never know when, the Attorney General might show up at our door. But so far, we are in Austin, which is a blessing. We get the support of the city council and the mayor. And the city of Austin is sympathetic and good. And most of our residents really like Austin and do well. It's too expensive. So it's hard to get started. But for the most part, we have a very high success rate of people getting on their feet after 3 months and going on with their lives. So many, especially from Eritrea, do very well because most of them win asylum. It's such a clear-cut human rights situation there that most of them win, although they were losing, many of them during the Trump administration. Okay, so I think that is our presentation about what is going on in Austin, Texas. And thank you, Helen, for sharing your story. I know that's not easy to talk about, and it's so helpful. I try to encourage the residents of Casa not to tell the story so much about their trauma back home. I know there's a lot more to Helen's story and everyone's story that is not appropriate to be pulling out. But I think it's important for them to be able to tell the story of how they were treated when they got to the US border and what the US did to them, because hardly anyone knows about it. And it really has an impact on people's understanding to hear Helen and people like her talk about her own experience of being treated that way when she came here believing everything we've ever said about ourselves, that we are fair and just and will treat people that way. Okay.
Thank you so much, Jennifer and Helen, for sharing your story. It's true. Most of us are so unaware of the realities of what actually happens on the ground. And with that, I wondered if perhaps, I see that Jen has one question in the chat, which is, she wants to know what you're doing right now. Helen, what's your job and do you like it?
I like this job because quiet and no stress.
So Helen found a wonderful job working for an import company, and I think you package jewelry and send it out to people. So as she just said, she likes it because it's quiet, and I think that the owners are very compassionate and nice, right?
Yeah, it's nice. This boss is nice.
Great. That's wonderful. Yes, I wondered, Jen, did you have any questions, any other questions that you'd like to ask before we open up the floor?
No, I don't have any other questions. I'm just so grateful that you made it, that you made it to Casa Marianela. And it's an important story that you come and you're telling. So we want everybody to hear that, and we hope other people get safety like you have.
Thanks, Jen. Jennifer, I do have a couple of questions because you've been doing this by the grace of Goddess, since the 80s. I wish that we didn't have to have places like what you have, but can you say a little bit about the differences of what you have experienced now and what it was like when you started? I mean, are there stark differences or is it similar? Can you say a little bit about that?
I would say there's some pretty big differences. Back in the 80s, people from El Salvador and Guatemala, I mean, that's when we started. That was who was. Back in the 80s, the idea that there were refugees coming to the Texas border was a brand new concept, because people had been, I mean, the border was very permeable back then. People went back and forth across it all the time. And so the fact that we started hearing there were people from El Salvador or Guatemala coming to the border that were fleeing for their safety was this brand new concept. And for the most part, they were being allowed to come in. They were being given papers like the people are now that told them to go to court. But for the most part, they never would show up in court because they never would win. There was not much point in going to court back then. And so people just came in and started living their lives without documents. And it was easier. It was easier back then. I mean, in the 80s, you could still get a driver's license if you were undocumented, and you could find work pretty easily. Housing in Austin was very affordable. So people just kind of slipped in, which doesn't mean it was great because they weren't documented. And we did have the amnesty program that helped some people, but a lot of people just stayed undocumented. My husband at that time was helping people go to Canada. And so Canada was taking a lot of people too. And those folks have done extremely well, the ones who left and went to Canada. I think the biggest shift happened 9/11. And right before 9/11, George Bush had been talking to Vicente Fox about doing a new amnesty program. The last amnesty program we had was in 1986, and it was Ronald Reagan. So we hadn't had an amnesty in all that time, and they were just about to negotiate one when 9/11 happened. And that day, I was working at Casa, and my first thought was, oh my God, I hope that wasn't a Latino that did that, because it's going to fall hard on whoever did that. And yet that's not the way it worked. You know, it didn't fall hard on Saudi Arabia. It fell hard on Latinos, and the border became progressively militarized. Immigrants began to be treated as terrorists, which is absurd because they weren't taking flying lessons. They didn't come here on visas. They didn't, you know, they're the most patriotic people you could meet. But yeah, it's become just way more difficult on the one hand. And on the other hand, it has become a more fair system, I think, in terms of winning asylum. Asylum is a very high standard. You have to prove you have a well-founded fear of persecution in your country. But if you can prove that, and you're able to prove that without having evidence, I mean, based on your story, you can prove that, you can get asylum, and that's a pathway to citizenship. So in some ways, it's better, and in a lot of ways, it's worse, especially in terms of the use of immigrants by the right wing to get more power, which of course is happening all over the world, but is very dramatically displayed Thursday night by our former president.
Thank you. Yes, it's such a curiosity for me, because the world seems to everywhere right now has this aversion for immigration, yet our colonial practices have created this huge migrational problem where people are not safe where they are, and so they're having to move around for resources. It's very it's almost like a double bind. It's very very, very challenging. Jen, I'm wondering if you mentioned the woman who we had on before. Is it Luciana? Is that who it was?
No, it's not. Luciana Negro is the woman who started this group of people that are demonstrating in all of the town squares whenever a boat goes down or is in danger. Yeah, but no, there was a woman who spoke about it who I think lives in Switzerland, but I don't remember her name right now.
Okay, that's fine. I think I remember her presentation because it was shocking to actually she had footage of boats and people actually, you know, she told us statistics of people actually, how many people have died trying to actually come on boats that were just left out there. And it's just horrific. So to hear Helen's full story of the amount of time that it took for her to finally find a place where she could feel like a human being and safe. 10 years. It took her 10 years. That's a resiliency and, you know, just a testimony to really what it takes for freedom and safety. You know, what the human spirit will do. So welcome, Helen. Welcome. You know, we do welcome you. Some of us will definitely welcome you with open arms. I see we don't have a lot of questions that are actually in the chat, but Jen, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I have a friend here from the Philippines, Charito Basa, and she talks about how our economic colonialism has created situations where people need to immigrate to the north, to the capitalist countries. And she says, well, the people are just going where their money went. And I think that is really the case.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Precisely.
Thank you.
We're hoarding the money. Yeah, and you know, there's also the issue of climate change. We recently had a big influx of people from Mauritania. And when I was asking them what was bringing them to the United States, they said, number one, you can't get to Europe anymore. And of course, Europe is very tapped out right now because of the number of Ukrainians who are also needing help. But you can't get to Europe anymore. They still have slavery in Mauritania and climate change. You know, the rain's not coming like they used to. So that interplay between human rights and climate change. We have an estimated 100 million people who are displaced right now, and it's going to go up to 1 billion or something. I mean, the problem is we have more and more people being displaced. Every time I listen to BBC, I'm just like, oh no, 1 million more people just left Sudan. There's more and more people leaving their countries for one reason or another, and less countries receiving them. And I don't know if we don't start making room for people, it's going to get really, really ugly. It's already pretty ugly because Helen and people like Helen that all over the world right now that are trying to find a place to get to safety, there are predators preying on them while they are trying to get to safety. I mean, all along the way, there are people trying to steal from them and take advantage of them. In addition to what the governments do to them. So I don't know. I don't know what the future holds, but that part is scary to me.
Yeah, it's so important. And I want to thank Jen right now for encouraging us to actually go with this topic, because the gifts that these people, humans have to offer, they're not being received because they're not welcomed. And we really need to have a better way of addressing, like you said, Jennifer, how we deal with this very complex problem. And when I say complex, I don't mean complicated. And it can be complicated, but the complexity just means we need to say yes in different places to open up doors, because there are lots of spaces that are empty and lots of spaces that are so compact, and people have needs. So I'd like to actually just check in with Liliana. She may have a question for us here. So let's check in with Liliana and see if she has a question for us.
Yeah, I have a question for Jennifer. Jennifer, what kind of programs do you offer to the refugees when they get there? Do they learn? Do you have English classes? How do you help them walk into the culture here with the language and all of that? You could talk about
right. So we provide access to healthcare. Austin has free healthcare for people with no income, which is a huge thing because most people didn't have good healthcare back home, certainly didn't have it on their journey or in the detention center. So healthcare is huge. We have access to legal services and helping people file their asylum applications. And then we do have English classes at night. And I think one of the best things about Casa is the community, that you have this diverse people living together in very close quarters. It's quite crowded, from all over the world, different religions, different languages, different cultures, different foods, and who have all gone through the same thing and have this shared experience. And I think being in that community is a very healing thing for people. After they've been there for a few months, people are ready to live with people who pray the way they pray and eat the way they eat. But in the beginning, when people first come to Casa, they're extremely tolerant of each other. And that's such a beautiful thing to watch. Just this morning, we sent 6 people with Liliana to an art class at La Peña, and they were from 6 different countries. They were from Colombia, Venezuela, China, Iran, Venezuela. Where was the 6th? Eritrea. Oh, Helen. Helen was there. I forgot that one. At any rate, so beautiful, and there they were. None of them native English speakers, working on doing art with Liliana. So, so grateful for that too, Liliana. What a beautiful opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. I have another question for Ellen. do you are you still in touch with your family in Eritrea? And how do you do that? Do you communicate through cell phone, through email? How are you in touch with them? And do you have family back there?
That's your question about your family. Are you in touch with them?
Just like phone number, it's money, no internet.
There's no internet, so you have to pay. You have to use a phone card to call them.
Yes.
And you're able to call them. And when's the last time you talked to them? Monday, because this week was her birthday, so she called and talked to them. Yeah. And both her sister and her father are very ill. And you can't send money to them, can you? It's difficult to send money.
Yeah, I send because for now it's my sister sick.
So you are able to send money?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So she's in touch with them, but she can't see them, which is painful. Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
I have a question for Jen. Jen,
Yes.
how is the general population in Italy? What is their opinion about the migrants coming in? I guess it depends, right?
Yeah, they're divided, and there are some people who are very much in favor, and there are a lot of people that are very much against. So now we have a fascist prime minister, and she's getting ready to create an immigrant center in Albania, where they're building some large buildings where immigrants will be sent. Instead of coming to Italy, they're going to be sent to Albania, and then from there possibly into the rest of Europe. But it's a way of isolating the people that are trying to come and putting them somewhere else. And that also, they've made deals with other countries, Libya and so forth, in Northern Africa, to keep migrants there. And they've had some internment centers where they're kept, and they undergo all kinds of really terrible treatment and rape and starvation, and terrible things happen. So the people coming up to Europe from Africa have to go through a lot before they can even get the boats that take them here. And then the boats cost a lot of money for their travel, and they're very dangerous, and they very well may die. So it has gone up and down. I mean, things have gotten worse and better and worse again. And it's a huge problem. And that is what makes this little town such a wonderful example of how to do it right, instead of how to create a horrible human response to the need for solidarity. And so, yeah, Italy has a lot of different attitudes, and not everybody remembers how many Italians have immigrated into other countries, like the people in Riace remembered.
Thank you, Jen. Liliana, any other questions?
Yes. Somebody's asking, how can we support Casa Marianela? What would it be the best help that you can get? What do you need?
We certainly need financial support. We're actually going through kind of a hard time right now, and we try not to turn anyone away. I mean, if someone's recently arrived and they come to our doorstep and we don't have room for them, we try to squeeze them in somewhere, because we don't really have any backup. We're one of the only programs of our kind in the whole country, and even Austin doesn't have a homeless shelter that's back up. So yeah, we need financial support. But while I'm mentioning that, I do want to give a shout out to Jen, because Jen gave us the funding to hire the very first staff member for Casa Marianela back in 1986. So the Foundation for Compassionate Society was an important part of how we actually got off the ground in the very beginning.
Wow.
Thank you, Jennifer, and congratulations for the marvelous miracle that you've created from that time until now. How many houses do you have?
I think we own 12 houses, and we have 3 more that people are loaning to us. So we have 15 houses and 220 or 30 people living with us every night.
Fantastic. Just fantastic.
Wow. I have a question for you, Jennifer, myself, which is, if this is the only program of its kind in the United States, have you been asked to do trainings? Would you, can it scale up? Meaning, can you train other people? Because it sounds like there's such a need. And
I know, I think one of the problems is, it's interesting, I'm part of a national network. I was on a national network call just yesterday of people that are doing housing and support work like we are. There are a lot of immigrant services in the country, immigration, like legal services and social services. But for some reason, people are really scared to do housing. I think people find it intimidating. I don't know. We've had a terrible time. It's funny because back in the 80s, during the Central America peace movement, which is what we grew out of, there were a lot of these little houses. And unfortunately, they closed because the wars in El Salvador and Guatemala ended. And then, the next group came and the next group came. I mean, we could have never imagined back in 1986 that in 2023, we'd be serving people from 48 countries. I mean, that was just absolutely unthinkable. But unfortunately, the infrastructure just has not grown up to meet the need. And we have done trainings, and I have offered to support anyone. And we have, to be 100% honest, we have succeeded in starting 2 more organizations, one in New Orleans called Home is Here, and one that just opened in Houston called Casa Mateo, which is for women and children. And there's already Casa Juan Diego in Houston, which has been around as long as we have. But they only give people 10 days to stay with them. So what doesn't exist, there are little shelters along the border. What doesn't exist are shelters like ours that take people all the way from the point of arrival to resettlement. That's what's hard to find.
Okay, great. I just think it's so, the way that you describe the process, I think, I know we had you on the last time. This time it really struck me, the complications of what happens at the border to actually an implementation, even the support of people who may even qualify for asylum, but what's needed because there is not an infrastructure for them. We say, come, and then we say, okay, maybe we'll talk to you in months. And then find your way back to us. We need to know how to find you. I mean, that is just such a crazy way for us to be dealing with this whole quagmire. It's crazy.
Even worse than that is the fact that I think the United States is doing a better job than anybody else right now. That's how low the bar is.
That's terrifying. That's absolutely terrifying. Okay, I'm going to go back to Liliana because I see that we have some questions coming in.
Yeah, a question for Jennifer. Do you know how many people have come through Casa since it opened? Just a ballpark figure.
I really don't have that number, I mean, last year was 575, but that's been sort of steadily growing. I think back when I started in the 90s, it might have been 200 or something. I mean, we only had one house for the first 18 years and until 2003 or something. Yeah, I think we got our second house in 2003. So I don't have the number. I don't have the number, but it's ranged from probably 100, 150 to where we are now at close to 600.
Thank you, Jennifer.
More questions, Liliana?
No, I'm actually out of questions.
Okay. Marta is asking this question because, she's asking a question in the Q&A about women and children and the domestic violence and rape that they're escaping from in this displacement process. Can you speak a little bit about that, and how is that?
Well, certainly, I work at the adult shelter, which is single men and women. We also have 4 houses for women and children, and we have a duplex for 2-parent families and single fathers. But at our women's and children's shelter, men are not allowed to come there or visit there for more than 5 minutes at a time. So we are very serious about making sure that women are safe. And in fact, Posada Esperanza, our women's and children's shelter, we don't publicize the address, and we don't have the number of visitors that we have at our adult shelter. It's not sort of the public facing part of the organization. So we try to keep things quieter. And honestly, when we started that shelter, I thought, how are single immigrant women who don't have papers with children gonna get on their feet? And yet they do. And it's been great because they support each other, and a lot of them move in with each other, and they can do it. I mean, it's remarkable because, of course, childcare is really hard to find, and somehow they manage it.
Great. Are there any other things that you would like to say or want us to know about the immigrant process that we can raise awareness on right now? I mean, it is horrific what I'm hearing from you. And Helen,
Well,
thank you for telling that story.
If President Trump gets reelected, oh my God, it is such a frightening thought. I mean, honestly, it's kind of surprising to me that we even have an immigration system anymore. If you think about this, I mean, the immigration system is vast. It has hundreds of different categories that you can apply under. And every 4 years, you get a new president who's got a whole different philosophy of how to do things. And so during the Trump administration, the awful Stephen Miller spent the entire 4 years going through the immigration system and like creating barriers for everyone. And so the Biden administration, I think, came in with good intentions, and spent a lot of time trying to undo a lot of the other things. But I mean, on the ground, how are the Border Patrol agents? I mean, they get whiplash, like, oh, this time we're supposed to do this, and this time we're supposed to do that. It's chaotic. It's a chaotic system, and it's not a fair system. People don't get treated equally. We see people that get in. We're like, why did you get in, and why did you end up in detention, and why did you get sent back to southern Mexico? It's chaotic, and understandably chaotic, because immigration should not be something that is a political football. It should be something that is rational, that we're like, okay, here we are, the richest country in the history of the world. We have X amount of capacity. We should be doing our fair share of helping displaced people around the world. How can we do that in the fairest way possible? And yet that is not the way the conversation goes. It's just this crazy stuff about, all immigrants are murderers, or, President Trump saying all these people came from mental hospitals or prisons. It's just, it's really madness.
Right. Yes. Jen, do you have any other questions or any other comments that you'd like to share?
What do you think of Biden?
It was a low, again, it's a very low bar that he had to overcome. I think, what I like about Biden is he has reasonable people who have been appointed to do the job. And he has been nothing but hammered practically from the day he walked into the White House for saying that he's letting everyone in the world into the country. And I don't know how anyone functions with that level of pressure. And when there is such a huge amount of pressure on the border, especially after the pandemic and after Remain in Mexico, when President Trump had all those people, camping out on the border and taking children away from their parents. I mean, it's a very, I don't know that anyone could do a great job, but from our point of view, it's been easier to deal with. Things are moving more smoothly. We see more people winning asylum, and there's still tremendous amount of injustice, but it's a little bit better than it was. And it could be a whole lot worse if Trump gets reelected.
Thanks, Jennifer. I think Liliana has a question.
Yeah, there's a question from Donna, and she's saying, do you have a policy for non-drug use on the premises of Casa Marianela?
We do. We have non-drug and non-alcohol use, but it's interesting because the majority of our folks are from Africa. And when we ask them, it's a question on the intake, have you ever had a problem with alcohol or drugs? And they're like shocked that you're even asking them that question, because most of them come from a much more conservative culture and they haven't been exposed to it the way our kids have. And generally, we don't have problems with that. I mean, if someone comes home and they've had a few drinks, we're not going to make them leave, unless they were being disorderly and causing a fight or something like that. But no, we intend to be a sober environment. And obviously, we're helping people understand that as an immigrant, you have to hit the ground running. You really can't kick back and relax right now. You gotta keep going. What you've got is your forward motion, and you need to use it. So it's not a good time for alcohol and drugs. It's a good time to keep going.
Great. I think there's a question from Tracy. Gary is wondering, can you tell us the name of the network? You mentioned it, that you had, there's a national.
It's a, let me put my email in so this is a monthly Zoom meeting that we have with people from around the country. And if anybody is interested, I can put you on the listserv to get an invitation to that. Yesterday, we had people from Phoenix and Laredo and San Antonio and Philadelphia. And it's pretty fascinating, Portland, so it's like this, it's a good way to sort of check the pulse of what's going on in other parts of the country.
Great. I have a question for you. Do you need volunteers to help at these, at Casa Marianela?
Yes, we do have volunteers at all of our shelters. All of our English teachers are volunteers, and then we have people who volunteer a few hours a week in our shelters. We also have groups from churches. We get a lot of kids from UT and St. Edward's who come volunteer on the weekend. So I personally am also a volunteer coordinator, and I consider that a hugely important part of what we do. Because when you think of what Helen and people like her have gone through, the trauma in their country, the trauma on their journey, the treatment they've gotten in detention, I feel like one of the most important things we can do is introduce them to people, nice people in the community, kind people who care about them as human beings. Because most of them aren't running into that at work either. They're generally looking for day labor. I mean, it's not the most kind and gentle introduction to a new country. So yes, I think volunteers are important. And not only that, I feel like it's the most important political work we can do as well, because you can visibly see it changing people's attitudes just to meet the people at Casa.
Wonderful. Okay. You're leaning in, Jen.
I was just thinking how great it would be if you could come to Italy and meet the people in Riace and vice versa, if they could come and meet you. So that I hope maybe someday that can happen.
Yeah, that was beautiful. I love that, Jen. And I think it's so true. It's so true. I mean, I think if every family took in one person, you know, it would enrich everyone, and there would be plenty of space for everyone. And yet we just don't do it. And what a nice thing for that little town that was dying to think of that, because that's often the last thing people think of.
Right. And it worked, and it's still working. So, yeah.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. I love that. I did not know about that, and I'm going to tell everybody about it.
Oh, great. Are there little towns in Texas that might be used that same way?
You know there are. You know there are, and there are immigrants in all those places. You know, I mean, that's always the thing, is people are like, they hate immigrants, and they're like, but Jose, he's different. He's like, he's that guy that works in the kitchen that we all like. You know, it's the biggest problem is people think of immigration in the abstract, and it's really easy to be cruel in the abstract when it's difficult to be cruel in person.
Right.
And so it's so important to actually know the real people that you're talking about, because it would shift the conversation completely.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Liliana, do you have any other questions right now?
Did you see my email? I put my email a little farther up in the chat, jlong@casamarianela.org. Did everybody see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have two comments. One from Jody Brown Bear, child. This is the time for the ladies in leadership roles to come together, uniting on the new world matriarchal perspective. It starts in a home with hearts that care. It starts in a tiny village. I look forward to co-creating with like-minded souls. Thank you for this conversation, Jen. That was from Jody Brown. Then I have another comment from Tracy Gary. And she says there were over 35 million refugees in 2022, according to the UN. On average, I understand it takes for them to find refuge camps and to get into them and then resettlement. It takes them an average of 23 years each.
You know, there are two movies that I recommend. One is called The Swimmers, if you guys haven't seen that.
Right.
It's about these two girls from Syria traveling to Germany, and I think it's really well done. And the other one is Human Flow, which is about refugee camps. And the reality is less than 1% of people in refugee camps end up getting resettled. And it's not like a living, it's just a survival type situation in most of those camps. And Human Flow goes to a bunch of them, and many of them are in deserts in really abysmal conditions.
Okay.
And why did Helen decide not to come to Europe?
Good question. Why didn't you go to Europe?
Because my family is helped my uncle and my friend.
So it was her uncle's decision. Because he was funding it. It's much more expensive to come to the United States, but probably it's because so many people were drowning in the Mediterranean. A lot of Eritreans have died in the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
Because Sahara is danger. Yes.
What is danger?
It's Sahara, Libya.
Oh, the Sahara. Also the Sahara in Libya. Yeah, very dangerous. Terrible. I mean, the fact that I learned this at the last Salon, Jen, that the EU is paying Libya to patrol the waters and put those people in Libyan prisons.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I don't think people in the world know about that.
Yeah, it's really terrible. Yeah, people don't know about it. Right.
And now England is sending asylum seekers to Rwanda to be processed in Rwanda.
And just keeping people out is their main desire. relocating them somewhere else.
And Australia, those prison islands that they have.
Yeah, it's some kind of, I guess it's racism too. Just keep the other people away.
It's a fear-based way of looking at life. And, Canada has closed their border too. We used to send a lot of people to Canada. A lot of people used to cross over to Canada, especially our French speakers. And you can't get into Canada anymore if you don't have a relative.
Wow. That is, that's just so crazy because we continue to extract, I'm thinking we continue to extract resources from countries that people, have to flee to be able to actually afford life to support their families back in their home countries. And those people who try to make a better way have no place to go except for these horrible places. It's such a conundrum. I mean, we really need the maternal gift economy now. I mean, we
certainly do. I know when NAFTA first came in, I thought that was so crazy. It was like free trade, and it was free only for the corporations. So we started dumping all this government-supported corn in Mexico, completely obliterated their corn economy, wiped out all different varieties of corn. And then those corn farmers weren't allowed to come to the United States to get jobs. I mean, what's free about that?
Exactly. Yeah.
Guanajuato got wiped out, and a lot of them are in Austin now. It's just like, but that's robbery. It's not just robbery of their corn; it's robbery of their people. They need their strong, adventurous, capable people in their countries. I don't feel good about sucking all these immigrants up from around the world either. They're building our country.
Yeah.
I mean, we say it so opposite, acting like they're stealing something, and actually we're stealing them.
Yeah. The strongest, the best, the smartest, I'll come up here. And then we think of them as inferior.
Or we don't, I mean, gosh, at least President Bush, when he was the governor of Texas, was smarter about that and said, look, these guys are our neighbors and they're building our economy. And my sister-in-law's from Mexico, so lay off the Mexicans. But you don't hear that out of the Republican Party anymore.
And the long trail that they have to come, the Darien Trail.
Darien Gap,
Darien Gap. What was that like?
Yeah, Helen did that all by herself. How many days, Helen? On the Darien Gap. Oh, what is the Darien Gap? The part between Colombia and Panama.
3 days.
Just 3?
2.5, yeah.
Yeah, she was fast. That's amazing. Some people, it takes them 2 weeks. Because you can climb mountains and go across rivers.
Yes. Water like hair, all water.
Water up to your neck.
Wow. So was it scary?
Were you scared?
Yeah, I'm scared because some people die.
Did you hear that? She said, I'm scared because some people were dying. Yeah.
Goodness. Yeah. I think Liliana has a question.
I have a comment from Marta Benavides. Marta Benavides said, I would suggest that somebody takes the challenge to understand the unipolar world order versus the multipolar world order going on as part to the wars right now. This is impacting on migration. Marta. I hope that was clear.
Yeah, it was clear.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think that many of us agree with her. We are very clear about what's going on. We talked about the corporations. I mean, it's not a person. It's really a system. It's systemic. Yeah. Jen?
Yeah. The United States wants to be the one leader of the world. And that is not happening. And it can't happen. The world is a multitude. And we have to make it we have to allow that and dismantle the attitude of, it's a patriarchal attitude that the United States collectively has. And it's destroying a lot of things and making us make terrible decisions and making us support other patriarchal people, other patriarchal countries like Israel now in destroying Gaza. So it's a terrible moment, really, that we're in. And we need to do everything we can to make it better, to change, understand it and make it and change it.
Yeah, we can't escape the notion that all the systems that are in place, the agreements that were in place, were set in place based on a hierarchical, not a collective, not actually allowing there to be a group of people or cooperative people actually organizing. There were a group of people from the top who managed people who were developing. You know, that's just another hierarchy. So we need to have a different system because the systems were set up to be able to operate that way. So that's why we need to also replace systems so that they work better. But we have to have systems that have worked, that are scalable, like Casa Marianela, the humanity of it. People have current needs. They have needs now. Lives are at stake, and we need systemic change. Those things need to happen simultaneously. Those of us who can help on the ground handling this, the level of humanity where people are coming in, and we also need those people who are willing to actually topple the large systemic systems. We need everyone to do their job, whatever it is. You know, it's kind of a rallying call for you to actually find your passion and do it for the betterment of the planet and the betterment for the people. We can't all do the same thing all at once to support your one vision. Everyone has a vision that they must do. All of the parts need to actually be working together. And that's what I see happening at Casa Marianela, that you have all the pieces working together and you're effectively being able to actually transition people. You have to acclimatize people. They have to learn a new language. They need to learn a whole set of new cultural values. They need to be able to learn how to collectively work together with people who differ. I mean, these are the kinds of things that even in our, you know, if you look around at the groups that you work with, oftentimes there are people who are of a like mind. They're not differing. The world has many differing people, and we don't often have the capacity to be able to be in the presence of that difference and find the humanity that's there. So I think that's what these immigration problems are really calling us to do, is to see each human and life itself as being part of this unit that we need to support. Yeah. Okay, I'm off my soapbox.
That was good.
That was a good one. Liliana?
Yeah, I have a comment from Cristina Herencia. She says, it is also important to consider migration produced by outside political intervention and the effects it has on the local population. There's a forced social and cultural engineering in the process of implementation. That is one thing. The other, from the migration perspective, due to environmental change, due to climate change and political crisis taking place now, for instance, in South American countries presently.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's also important for us to remember that while these very large, it seems, and looming problems, you know, you're not going to change the whole system, but look at what Casa Marianela has done with Helen. It took her 10 years, and we finally have been able to find a way to stabilize her so that she can actually eventually, have an impact with her family through her uncle in another country who may be able to, move in there. But she first needed to find her feet, and she did not give up. And we cannot give up. That's what we need to remember. We cannot. Yeah. Liliana, Jen, let's see. Yes.
Yeah, I think the big picture is also important. And I see that Frida Worden put in a comment that we need a Jubilee year for ending international debt. Now, those big picture things like that, what a huge difference that would make. And because we've had a flow of money also through the debt relations coming towards the north from the south, from the people that needed the money more and that we gave loans to. We've had a crooked system going on for such a long time, and we need to turn it around the other direction.
Yeah. Liliana, do you have any other questions or comments?
I have a question for Ellen. Is there anything that Ellen would like to say about what her life has been because of her migration experience?
She's having trouble understanding the question. Let me see if I can help her. How do you feel about your experience of leaving home, coming to the United States, being in journey for 10 years? Yeah, how do you feel about all of that you've been through?
Because America is safe and freedom of health in my country, not here.
Okay. So she just said, America is safe and freedom and not in my country. So I guess she thinks it's worth it. It was worth it to come all the way to the United States. You feel you're happy you did this?
Yeah.
I don't know. Is there a different way to word the question?
No,
It's just Helen is doing great with her English, but it's some things, complex things are a little bit hard to understand.
I just wanted her to just say how she felt about, what she just said. It is the fact that she feels safe here and she's not going to become a slave or anything like that, or killed like she will be in Eritrea.
Right.
Wonderful. So let me just ask Jen, are there any last words that you would like to say before I kind of close this out? And then I'll go to Jennifer and Helen.
Well, I'm so happy to have been part of this program with Jennifer and Helen. And it's such an important issue, such an important migration of people that's happening now and going to happen more and more in the future as the environment degrades. And we just all need to be very attentive and very open to seeing what's happening and trying to do our best to make it okay for people who are coming here and not terribly dangerous like it is a lot of the time. So thank you to Casa Marianela and to Jennifer and to all the work you've been doing all these years. And I'm glad you came to the program and talked to us about it.
So Helen, is there anything you want to say to close?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Helen was so surprised when I told her there were 23 people watching because she only saw a few people. I just think I feel so honored to be able to do this work, because what could be a better job than to be able to give people exactly what they need right at the moment that they need it, and then be working with people who then just with one hand up, they get up and run. You know, it's really an amazing privilege to get to do this. And I'm so grateful to all of you for listening today, and to Jen for her important role in getting Casa launched, and to feminists everywhere, which is our hope for the future.
Thank you. I want to thank you both. I want to thank Jen for really highlighting this example of the way in which a city can actually innovate and revive an entire city while resolving a very complex problem of immigration and human migration around the planet. And his example, say his name again, Jen.
Domenico Lucano. Mimo is his nickname, Mimo Lucano.
Yes. He has set an example of how governance, how one man's vision and understanding of the complexity of bureaucracy can actually be supported, or can support a real, true solution and save people's lives. Yeah. And have them go off, like graduate, so that they can actually become part of a growing and sustainable and thriving world. I mean, it's just really inspiring. And Jennifer and Helen, my goodness, Jennifer, it is very, very inspiring to hear the work that you do. And indeed, one of the things that I kept thinking, especially when you were saying your goodbyes, was that you are the face, Casa Marianela is the face of what one would think that the United States of America stands for. That a place of welcoming, a place of assistance, a place of safety, where you can have a roof over your head, food in your belly, and be safe from the terrors that you're escaping from, and then helping you to find a way to actually contribute. Again, not just contribute to the little house that you are, but a contribution that you are giving back to the community, and eventually be able to be a contributing community to the community in a larger sense. And I had this flash of Lady Liberty, in my head. That's the beacon that there needs to be a statue of the Lady Liberty there, or a version of what Casa Marianela's Lady Liberty would look like. Because
we do have the Virgin of Guadalupe out in our backyard. So.
That's beautiful. That's very beautiful. Yes. So thank you both, because it is a very complicated issue. And I think I understood it better this time. The first time it was just so, the information and the suffering was what I took in. This time I understood the complexity. And especially Helen, I want to thank you for sharing your journey, because 10 years, that, that's just a testimony to human will. Knowing that you were here for something better. You came to this world to be and do something better and to make a contribution. So thank you for joining us today and sharing your story, and wishing you the very, very best for all that comes to you in the future. And I want to thank Liliana for, wrangling questions and comments, and Diane for always handling our technology. And on behalf of the International Feminists for a Gift Economy, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. And for those of you who are watching this in the future, I want to thank you. If you want to be notified of our upcoming events and salons, please do sign up for our notification list, which is at our website, the maternalgifteconomymovement.org. We really do read all of your questions and comments and try to get them to the places that would be able to effectively respond to you and incorporate your suggestions into our salons. So please do write to us at maternalgifteconomy@gmail.com. I'm really excited for the next month in July coming up. We have 3 events that we're going to be doing. The first one is a special event on July the 6th. We have my fan Jordan, who is from Australia. She's visiting Italy right now, and we are going to be doing a book launch with her on her book, Women's Work in the Pandemic Economy, The Unbearable Hazard of Hierarchy. And I'm just going to show you the book. It's not reversing, but this is what the book cover looks like. And what is exciting for me is that she has many of the women in our network. She's used their work and quoted them, including Jen and some of our others. So she will be with us on July the 6th. The registration is open now. The 2 salons that we have scheduled for July are, I'm very excited about that. There was an event that happened at the beginning of June in Costa Rica. It was a seminar that Maria Suarez Toro put together, and she brought down to join her Joan Marler and Vicky Noble, and Joan Marler's daughter. Let me see if I can find her name. Her name is Sorel Mochia de Jen. What was the, how do you say the last name? Cogg. Cogg. Okay. So
sorry,
they will.
Colliano or something like that. I couldn't hear you. So
that's okay. So
put it in the chat.
Thank you. They are going to be speaking about this event that they did, a one-day seminar where they brought together indigenous women, came down from the mountains, 2 different tribes, and the Afro slave ships that actually landed there. The African women were there, and they brought together this communities to talk about the archaeomythology and citizen science. So there's going to be 2 parts where they're talking about this multicultural dialogue of their inherited knowledge using archaeomythology, the gifts that came from that, because Maria Suarez, Joan Marler, and Vicky Noble are part of our International Feminists for Gift Economy network. So they are really versed in the gift. We're very excited to hear about that. The first salon is July the 13th, and the second salon will be later in the month. And then there's a third event that we'll do when we come back from our break in the fall, where we're going to actually interview the youth who are helping to do the citizen science. And in these events, you'll see they discovered slave ships that Maria has talked about from before, and she'll tell you all about how that came about and what the students have done, and the recognition that's happening internationally, from Japan to where the original slave ships came from, et cetera, et cetera. We're just really, really excited because, again, it brings the notion of we're all one people that are now being able to see how this imperialism and colonialism has actually affected, and what we're doing to actually mitigate some of the trauma and the inequalities of how we're treating that knowledge today, and bring forward so that you know and are aware of the true impacts and the true history. So please do join us July the 6th and the first salon with Maria Suarez, Joan Marler, Vicky Noble, and Sorel on July the 13th. So thank you all for coming. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Take really good care, everyone. Bye-bye. Be safe.